itself. And some of those neighbors are such a mess. Of course, it takes one to know one, you understand that. There are so many bad apples in the barrel. How could I love anybody like that? Yuck. But the commandment of God is merciless in that respect. Have mercy on me. Don't make me love those people. It's too expensive, and they're so hopeless. They're such a mess. The vision gives you the will to do it anyway. And to understand what loving somebody really means. It doesn't mean putting up with their limitations and foibles and supporting them in doing all the bad stuff. Oh, that's all right. Go ahead. Doesn't mean that at all. Loving someone may be very tough, you know. It may involve swatting them down and locking them up and doing all sorts of things. It's called tough love. It may require that. But loving them requires that no matter what you do to them, you don't ignore them. And no matter what you do to them, you have only one thing in mind for them, that they also should see the vision and hear the voice. Not of your God as you see, but of their own God as they wish to see. Hard stuff. Remember, Jesus' commandment is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Love one another as I have loved you. Look what it cost him. Abraham Lincoln, look what it cost him. Loving other people might cost you everything. But the requirement is hard. Do it anyway, no matter what the risk. Because you see, it is from not doing this that our sadness comes, isn't it? The real source of our sadness is that we haven't done the one thing necessary. People have suggested that it's the time of Armageddon. People have noticed, as I have noticed, that one of the Scud missiles fell into the plain of Armageddon, literally. That the end of time is upon us somehow. For the next 10 years, oh my Lord, what may happen? What does that mean? You know, there's a lot of saying somewhere about the elect. We talked about that last time and I got in some trouble. But what the lady said is quite correct. The elect are not those who are chosen at the expense of others, but those who are chosen to minister to others. The elect, the 144,000, which is an infinite number, are those who are chosen to do the work in the time of crisis. And the work is to get the vision as quickly as possible. This Lent is a foreshadowing as well as a memory. It's a memory of Jesus, 40 days in the wilderness. There he is, you see. And you notice how much Jesus looks like Abraham Lincoln in that picture. A lady who had great foresight, who was 76 years old when she painted that picture. She didn't start painting till she was 70. She started painting because I told her it was ridiculous to continue to go to the horse races. And she agreed with me and quit going to the horse races and took art lessons and painted Jerusalem and the Pietà and Jesus in the wilderness. And that one she painted for me. And the dawn is coming up behind him. That's not the sunset. As he sits with his back to it, meditating on the great sorrow in the 40 days in the wilderness, struggling with the temptations of despair and the impossibleness of the task that is given to him. And she said to me, handing me this big thing, "That's the way I see you," she said. I said, "Thanks a lot." Well, I have learned that she was right. That's kind of the way I see myself. There's joy under that someplace, isn't there? But the work is hard. And the work is doing just what Jesus is doing there and saying in today's gospel. Going into the valley that reaches as enters far, finding the source of your sorrow, and learning what to do about it. This is the earth out of which splendor grows. And nobody thinks it sounds good until they really think about it. Unless a grain of wheat fall into the earth and die, it remains alone. But if it dies, it will bear fruit 100-fold. And this is what it costs to enter the cause of your sorrow. Please, I suppose the call of this time is, don't run away again. There's no problem so serious I can't find a distraction to avoid it. Turn on the TV and watch sitcom. Blech. Rather, if you have a closet with a door, go in it, shut the door, and sit on the shoes. Look into the darkness that your eyes behold, and enter the valley and pray. Lord, if necessary, let me be the spark. Who will it be? If you ask, it might be you. Blessed are you. And men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. Be the Savior of our nation. And know how big it is. For in this nation, the only frontiers are the sky. Well, how do you feel about that? Yes.
Apparently, I'd like to put a couple things together for myself if I can. The President's State of the Union message 3 weeks ago, he stated that this was a good and just war, implying that we are good and just people for fighting it. That every single individual over there was a volunteer. That they volunteered to be over there. We just returned from visiting with our daughter, whose husband is an F-111 pilot flying sorties out of Turkey. He absolutely did not volunteer to be there. He did not want to be there. It terrifies him and greatly saddens him what he is doing. But about a week ago, I read, and this is what I'm trying to put together. I think it's the California Water Authority's manifesto. They're there first to provide water to people, private people. Secondly, to industry. Thirdly, to farms. And lastly, if there's any water left, to the wildlife and the fish. And since there's never any water left, This imposition of power over other helpless creatures is really what this just nation has been a lot about. And it's the same type of imposition of power that Iraqi imposed over Kuwait. Now we're imposing over, Iraqi. And do we really deserve any less as humans than to blow each other up in view of what we do to all the lesser creatures? We keep worrying about ourselves and our own betterment, and our own growth. It's sadness. We are so.
Well, that's a pretty good stroke at the sadness, all right. I think that's kind of what we all feel, Leonard. I think that's right. As we see somehow what you bring up about the creatures in the forest is very critical here. The mercy and the failure of that, and that somehow or other the priorities don't get set in the right direction. And that the sorrow, did you see that cartoon? It was in the Chronicle, I guess, that showed an environmentalist who was demonstrating against the war, and then a little oil-covered cormorant came up out of the Persian Gulf and looked at him. He said, "Go get that nasty man." Suddenly, it's all very confusing, And that, yes, we have a feeling that the just war is basically for not too valuable motives. We don't like the motives. We don't associate with them. It is true that everybody that is in the services is a volunteer, but not to be in the Gulf. They're just being volunteer to be part of the service, not to be in that particular war. So that is not a correct statement, is it? But this, you see, the problem is, someone put it very well. In that kind of power that we observe, it is, I am stronger than you, therefore you must do what I say. Iraq said to Kuwait, I am stronger than you, therefore you must do what I say. Iraq was about to say to Saudi Arabia, I am stronger than you, therefore you must do what I say. And so therefore we say to Iraq, I am stronger than you, so you must do what I say. And the Russians are saying to Lithuanians, I am stronger than you, you must do what I say. And it's the old power game of force, isn't it? And we say to all the creatures in the wild who are dying by the millions, we are stronger than you, and therefore you must do what we say.
There's no justice in that. There's no yes. So it cannot be just.
Well, one wonders what the quality of justice is, you see. It's very curious that the word justice appears in today's gospel. And the word justitia is used in Latin, which comes on as righteousness. You hear this word righteousness that gets tossed about in various churches. That was a common ecclesiastical word. The righteous shall be an everlasting remembrance. Now notice the difference. Righteous comes on as self-righteous, doesn't it? As soon as you say righteous, you say, uh-oh. Everybody shrinks back from the idea of righteousness, which has become associated with pretense, right? But it doesn't say the righteous man shall be an everlasting remembrance, but the just man. And the just man has a different flavor to it. Because justice requires that you see both sides, right? You see? And maybe that underlies all that I'm saying here. A just war? Well, maybe the right word would be a righteous war. A self-righteous war. Yes, it is a self-righteous war. But is it just? Maybe. Maybe not. Yes?
I feel like there's justice is an absolute term. There is
We are stronger
than you. And
let's do what I say.
do as we say.
That's right.
And what is justice? It's in the minds of those people who think they're being just, I think. But I think there is also something to be said for something being more just than something else, even though it might not be absolutely just. And,
That's right. It's something you have to...
We are desperately striving for vision right now.
Well, that's what the vision is required, how to get as close as possible, right?
How to get as close as possible.
It's an agonizing...
We'll never get there, but how to get as close as possible. And I think we're striving for it. I hear rumblings, like you said, out of Washington, which is our first reaction into distrust. But I hear kinds of rumblings that I haven't quite heard exactly before.
Well, I've heard...
Some vision coming from there.
Some vision. I've heard something in regard to King Hussein. I noticed this morning that was exactly the appraisal that I have of King Hussein. He gets up there, and he sides with Iraq. And everybody says, blah, dump on you, But this morning, it turns out that the Bush administration is doing something far more just than that about King Hussein. Instead of, declaring war on him or pulling the support out from under him or doing whatever else, they noticed that he was being difficult to their position. And immediately they said, we're going to do a reappraisal of our aid to Hussein. And it turns out the reason for the reappraisal is to avoid Congress doing something worse. And in the bottom it says that the State Department is very aware that Hussein is really our friend and that we have to protect him because in the negotiations that come after this war, he's going to be a principal source of the right solution. And that therefore, instead of just jumping on him because we're stronger, it's time for us to seek a little justice because with King Hussein, well, he really deserves it.
And I heard Baker this week talking about the plight of the Iraqi people, which I think is a good thing to be hearing. Hopefully there's something behind that. I heard, I think it was George Bush, quote, curiously, Abraham Lincoln, and I can only paraphrase it because I didn't sit down and memorize it, but it was something to the effect that, I think it was Bush, Abraham Lincoln said that in times like this he falls on his knees because he finds that it's the only place he can go.
Well, that's a good start, isn't it? Yes, Herman.
This week I was reading a story about a farmer who walked through the forest at Valley Forge, and he saw a horse tied to a tree. So he walked a little further, and pretty soon he heard a voice, and he walked to the direction of the voice, and he stopped, and he heard a man who was deeply in prayer and in terrible anguish, and he saw George Washington, and he was drenched in sweat and just imploring God to, help the colonies at that time and to somehow find a solution to the terrible mess that we were in. And he said he went away in awe and he was just overcome with emotion. And somehow I think that story and the story of Abraham Lincoln should be
Paralleled.
taught to all of us at this time, because really I think the true solution is when we go to our knees and we can't solve it on our own, whatever the problems are, whether it be the water problem or any other problem, and somehow to get the vision and start with ourselves, and then maybe the rest of the world will also join us.
Well, that's it. And notice George Washington's off in the forest by himself. It's the closest thing he could find to a closet, right? But there in secret, he was doing the one thing necessary. And but that reminds me, you mentioned the Civil War about justice. The story is told that a young private went in, had been caught with some malfeasance, and was taken before General Lee, and was terrified, and was obviously terrified. And General Lee looked at him and said, "You don't need to be so frightened, young man. You'll get justice here." The young man said, Yes, General, I know I will. That's why I'm so afraid. Well, nevertheless, it's precisely that. And that notice that fear is the instrument that is invoked by force. Whereas the other motive is love, and that love is always stronger. And so whatever force is used, the love must always be stronger. It is true that our government has begun to speak of the welfare of the Iraqi people. And I think it's genuine. I think they know that unless Iraq is rebuilt into a satisfactory nation, that the dangers that will flow, practically speaking, are far greater than the ones we now encounter. That we must find justice, no matter how impossible it may seem. And to believe, curiously, that justice is something that the majority of people really like. We will always have people who are never satisfied. But somehow or other, there is a faith, and I suppose this faith lies behind democracy, that the voice of God tends to speak in the majority of people regardless of how it looks on the outside. That in our hearts we have a hunger for justice. Believe it. Well, they used to say, Happy Lent, everybody, but maybe it isn't happy. But maybe it is. So, find George Washington's forest, and we shall all do something together. Yes?
I'd like to make an announcement. I will be getting a newsletter out tomorrow, and for those of you that are new here, I want to welcome you. And I want to let everyone know that Father will be having a Lenten service this Wednesday at 7:30, in case you don't get your newsletter in time. And everyone is welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Mercy. Pardon? My birthday. Oh, yes, my birthday is Friday.